Pinapasuko na umano ni President Bongbong Marcos ang mag-amang Sara at Rodrigo Duterte. Ito nga ay matapos na maglabasan ang mga taong nagpatunay sa mga anomalyang ginawa ng mga ito. Maging si Senator Bongo nga ay naiipit na din matapos itong idamay ng mga sangkot. Ayon sa senador, wala umano siyang kinalaman sa isyu ng mga Duterte, kaya sana daw ay tigilan na siya ng mga bashers. Ayon pa sa balita, malinaw at detalyado ang naging pahayag ng mga sangkot. Narito, panoorin ang video.
Chair, actually, like to ask lang sana ng mabilisan before I give my short manifestation. Do we have any representatives from Department of Justice?
Yes,
Good
we do.
afternoon, Mr. Chair and Your Honors. I am Prosecutor Wesley Yang, Your Honor.
Hi, Attorney. Tama po ba?
Yes.
Attorney, sa pagkaalam niyo po, ano po ba ang status ng case ng pagkamatay ng ating biktima na si Del Britannico?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Ang nangyari kasi walang warrantless arrest na nangyari noon. So, the case went through the regular proceeding of preliminary investigation. The complaint was filed, and after the preliminary investigation, the Department of Justice found probable cause to press charges against two police officers, Police Officer Joven and Police Officer Villanueva. Unfortunately, when the warrant of arrest was issued by the Regional Trial Court of Iloilo, Branch 31, ay hindi sila mahanap. So, on our part, we will coordinate with because this case was filed way back October 2021, and this case was delegated to the OCP Iloilo. So we will coordinate, the DOJ will coordinate with OCP Iloilo for the issuance of alias warrant to exert efforts again to locate the whereabouts of these criminals, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. NBI, do we have any information? NBI, are you part of any investigation related to the killing of the victim, Del Britannico?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, as narrated by Mr. Britannico, our Death Investigation Division handled the investigation of the case. Yes, Mr. Chairman, our Death Investigation Division handled the investigation of the case, and they filed a murder case against the two police officers and two John Does.
Mr. Chair, instead of getting into more details and not to consume most of the time of the Quadcom, I do believe that the right venue is the courts to give justice to my beloved friend, Delphine Britannico. I just appeal and implore if the chair will also give its 2 cents. And I implore the NBI and the Department of Justice to reopen the case and do whatever it takes, do the proper investigation, and to try to find the right people to give justice to the victim of Del.
Yes,
Justice delayed is justice denied, Your Honor. Alam ko po na hindi na natin mababalik ang buhay ng aking kaibigan na si Del Britannico. Ang akin lamang pong layunin sa pagdinig na ito ay para hindi na po sana matularan ang mga ganitong gawain sa pamamagitan ng pag-amyenda ng kasulukuyang mga batas at pagbabalangkas ng mga bago. Gaya po ng aking nasabi nung huling pagdinig, Mr. Chair, kasama po ako ninyo ng ating pamahalaan sa paglaban sa illegal na droga. Kaisa po ako ng gobyerno at ng kapulisan sa mabilis na pagsugpo nito. Kaya naman po, sa kasalukuyan ng ginagawa ng ating mga law enforcement, ay ang pag-conduct ng isang test buy at kapag confirm ang target, magsasagawa ng buy-bust operations upang maaresto ang mga kriminal ng mabilis at hindi na kailangan ng warrant of arrest. Dahil sa kasalukuyang panuntunan, kapag ikaw ay caught in the act o yung sa Latin ay in flagrante delicto, ay common legal parlance na gumagawa ng krimen, right there and then pwede na pong hulihin at arestuhin, Mr. Chair. At kapag ikaw ay hindi nakikooperate at nilagay mo sa peligro ang buhay ng kapulisan, maaaring dumepensa ito at ikaw ay mapatay. Kaya lamang, ang ating iniimbestigahan ngayon ay ang pag-aabuso dito ng ilan. Na kung minsan, kahit walang unlawful aggression na requirement sa self-defense ay napapatay ang isang suspect na dapat arestuhin lamang. Worse, ang biktima na si Del Britannico, na hindi naman target ng operasyon at isang innocent bystander. Wrong place at wrong time, Mr. Chair. Pero yung pagpatay na ganun ay makikita mo na halang talaga ang bitukan ng mga taong gumawa nito. Bigla na lang binaril sa kadahilan ng kumukuha lamang ng video. Mr. Chair, hindi naman po bago sa atin ang dangerous drugs ng 1972 na inamyendahan ng Comprehensive Dangerous Drugs Act of 2002. At kung mapapansin natin, ginawang krimen ang planting of evidence na minsan ay ginagawa sa mga drug operations. Hindi lamang iyon. Ang gagawa nito ay mapaparusahan ng kamatayan under Section 29 of the said law, which states any person is found guilty of planting any dangerous drugs and or controlled precursor and essential chemical regardless of quantity or purity shall suffer the penalty of death. However, Mr. Chair, ngayon wala naman tayong death penalty sa ating bansa. Ang pinakamataas na parusa ay capital punishment. Itong probisyon ng batas na ito ay naglalayo na protektahan ang mga inosente sa pagsugpo ng droga. Layon ko po na makapagbalangkas tayo makapag-amenda ng batas na hindi na maulit, katulad ng pag-aamenda ng batas natin noong 1972. Makagawa tayo po ng ilang batas, amenda o bagong batas na that would prevent and protect the innocent lives in our fight against illegal drugs, Mr. Chair. Again, justice delayed is justice denied. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Nakatingin po ang ating Panginoon. Nakatingin po ang aking kaibigan na si Del Britannico ngayon. I hope justice will be served. And again, I implore NBI and DOJ, please help give justice to my brother and friend, Delphine Britannico. Maraming pong salamat, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Congressman Junicio. The next to interpellate is Congressman Lordan Suwan. You have 10 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a few clarificatory questions for Mr. Britannico. How would you describe your brother, Del?
Mr. Chair, napakabait po. Halos wala pong kalaban yung kapatid ko.
Wala siyang kalaban?
Wala pong kalaban. Negosyante po siya. Pinili po niyang tumira sa Iloilo kasi tahimik po doon. Siya at saka yung pamilya niya po wanted to establish themselves.
And he would have been 41 if he were still alive?
Mr. Chair, he was born 1983. So he would have been 41.
Ka-age po kami sana. How about Mr. Alain Muller? Is it Muller or Muller?
Alain Muller, Mr. Chair.
Sino po siya?
Mr. Chair, hindi po namin siya kilala before this incident. Wala rin po kaming kilalang personal na Muller before this incident. But based on the reports, he was a target, an EJK target. And I think kapatid po niya na isa pa ay napatay rin po the year before because of an EJK operation.
So, medyo sangkot sila sa drugs, allegedly.
Yun po yung napabalita.
And he was killed in broad daylight.
He was killed in broad daylight based on the video po about 12:06 p.m. Of January 19, about noon time on a Sunday, Mr. Chair.
And you also mentioned in your affidavit that he was a level 1 target with 50,000 reward for his killing.
Yes, Mr. Chair, this was based on the confession of Police Corporal Joseph Andrew Joven that was given several times.
Where did he confess?
Mr. Chair, he did make that confession to the DID, NBI DID, when he was taken in after he surrendered. And he also did at least 2 video confessions to our family, Mr. Chair, on 2 separate occasions.
He confessed to your family?
Yes, Mr. Chair, on at least on 2 separate occasions.
And you have videos of his confession?
We have videos at least more than an hour and a half on both instances, Mr. Chair.
And those video confessions were the basis of this affidavit that you executed?
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
Were you able to talk with the family of Mr. Muller?
Yes, Mr. Chair. In fact, after the incident po, ang father ko po also represented the wife of Elaine Muller in a case that was filed against po the suspect.
So your father helped them file the case against the suspects?
Opo, Mr. Chair. And the brother po, kanina lang po, ka-message ko rin po yung brother na isa ng isa pong victim na si Elaine Muller. Yung brother po niya si Kurt Muller.
What happened to the case?
That case, Mr. Chair, was dismissed by the DOJ on preliminary investigation.
So even during the preliminary investigation, it was already dismissed. So there's no case at all right now.
At the moment, Mr. Chair, I think that is what the status is.
Was there any follow-up investigations on the murder of Mr. Muller?
None that we are aware of, Mr. Chair.
How about, were there cases filed regarding the murder of your brother?
Yes, Mr. Chair, as was mentioned by the NBI, there is one case po that was filed with the DOJ and then was brought to the RTC and 2 arrest warrants po were issued on that. So that is active po.
So the case is still active?
Yes po. And then the family po, after, that was before Joven surrendered po. And when Joven surrendered po and after po the video confession, the family po filed cases relative to that video confession. But these cases were dismissed by the DOJ.
So your family filed additional murder cases against the same people?
Yes, different. The NBI case, Mr. Chair, had Joven as charged. Also a certain Jerry Villanueva, also a police officer, and 2 John Does, Mr. Chair. The family case, using the basis of the Joven confession, had Joven and 4 other personalities, Mr. Chair.
Who are these 4 other personalities?
Mr. Chair, as mentioned earlier, these were Ricardo Morante, Vernilio Escorial, Michael Dimihilo de Felipe, and Freddy Libuon. Identified as gunmen by Joven were Ricardo Morante and Vernilio Escorial. By the way, also, Mr. Chair, we also included the Iloilo City Police Director at the time, Martin Defensor, when we filed the cases because of what was shared by Police Corporal Andrew Joven.
But did I hear it correctly that this case was dismissed?
Yes, Mr. Chair, by the DOJ.
By the DOJ. What was the reason for the dismissal?
Mr. Chair, according to them, insufficient evidence to indict the officers, and then confession is inadmissible as evidence even against Joven himself. That was their basis, at least from their conclusion of that.
Okay. I just have a few more questions because I'm curious about how were you able to say that the adventure was parked near that gate?
Yes, Mr. Chair. We recovered video footages from the first shooting, Mr. Chair, all the way to the surrounding area, and we also had footages after that, Mr. Chair. And if you notice in the video, Mr. Chair, the adventure had tape on the side, reflectors. And we were able to retrieve those reflectors at that gate, Mr. Chair. Because as what was shared by Suspect Joven, the reflectors were actually markers for the car, and also to somehow probably make sure that the operation goes unbothered or unhindered. But even before that, we were able to recover the tapes, and all videos in the area actually matched the time sequence, Mr. Chair. So the shooting happened at 12:06. At 12:18, 12:19 po, my brother was on the phone talking to his wife while he was parked po doon sa may area na yon. Tapos po doon po siya linapitan, tapos binaril po. Haba pong nakasakay siya sa motorsiklo po niya, naka-helmet, saka po hawak po niya yung telepono niya.
You mentioned in your affidavit that he was afraid that those suspicious-looking people were casing his house.
Opo, Mr. Chair, kasi at that time po, 2020, yung gate po na yun sarado, wala pa pong masyadong laman yung village. Yung bahay po nila nasa dulo po ng kalsada, sa kabilang dulo. So parang, Mr. Chair, my brother was really observant by nature. So parang may ano po niya, nakita rin po namin, lumabas po siya sa village, kasama po yung motorsiklo, tapos lumampas po siya doon sa may gate, nag-U-turn po siya. So ibig sabihin may binalikan po siya, may nakita po siya. Wala lang pong video doon sa mismong lugar. Pero
How did you know that he made a U-turn?
Kita po namin sa video, Mr. Chair, at the point that he made the U-turn.
So, I think you said in your affidavit that he was afraid for his family, right? And I would understand if you have a couple of kids and your wife, and then you see may mga suspicious looking na mga tao nandun malapit sa gate sa dulo ng street nyo, syempre, i-check mo talaga yon. So, parang yun ang nangyari sa kapatid mo na he was just looking after his family and then he was killed.
Opo, Mr. Chair, and he was actually on the phone with my sister-in-law.
When he was attacked, when he was shot?
Sinasabi po niya sa sister-in-law ko po na may mga suspicious na tao dito. And that is logged po by the phone records of both my brother and my sister-in-law.
And you're also certain that the same group that killed Muller is the one who killed your brother?
We are certain of that, Mr. Chair. Number one, because of the vehicle, and also because of again the tracing of who rented that vehicle, which was traced to be Police Corporal Joseph Andrew Joven, Mr. Chair.
And did Joven say that hindi nila sinasadya na patayin yung kapatid mo?
Opo, Mr. Chair. Nataranta lang raw po sila kasi tinatanggal po nila yung mga sticker doon po sa gate. Tapos kala po nila, sinundan po sila. Tapos yun na po, nagpanik. Sakay po sila ulit lahat sa sasakyan. Tapos sinarangan na po nila yung kapatid ko, binaba. Binaril, may konting diskusyon raw po. Tapos binaril na lang po.
So they were afraid that they would be identified?
Yes, Mr. Chair. That appears to be the case.
So, Mr. Chair, it would appear that Mr. Del Britannico was just an innocent bystander. He was there trying to protect his family, being careful, being cautious. Tapos parang nasa wrong place at the wrong time lang talaga. Nakakaawa talaga yung ganun. And I can't imagine my younger brother being killed that way. It's so senseless. And I joined the call of Congressman Ernix Jonicio for the NBI to reopen the cases so that justice will be served. And I also agree with what Mr. Britannico said earlier when he said that the end does not justify the means. And we have seen that the current administration of President Bongbong Marcos was able to successfully lower the incidence of drugs and even wage a war on drugs without resorting to bloodshed. So I guess it's possible after all. And That's all, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
No further questions.
Thank you,
Mr.
Congresswoman
Chair.
Suwan.
Mr. Chair.
Before Congresswoman Luistro, clarification lang kay Mr. Britannico. Did Mr. Juven, the suspect, admitted to you, to the video that they received money?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
As what? Para saan yung perang yun?
Una po, Mr. Chair, para sa una pong pagtanggap ng pera was 100,000 po for a killing of a certain kagawad Virgilio Coronado Soledad.
Okay, so every time there is somebody killed, merong kapalit na bayad yon. Is that what
Ang
he is
nabanggit
saying?
niya lang po yung pangatlo po nilang pinatay na binigyan po sila ng 100,000.
Okay, sige.
Tapos ang binanggit niya rin po, Mr. Chair, was doon sa kay Mueller, ang reward money po was 50,000.
Okay, sige. Thank you, Mr. Britannico. We also have here Miss Erminia Muking Espino. Where is Miss Espino? Si Ma'am Muking. So, Ma'am, I'm glad that you are able to attend this committee hearing.
Yes,
because-
good evening po, Mr. Chair.
Yes, we sent you invitations during the last two hearings that the Quad conducted, but you failed to attend. That's why I'm glad that you are here.
Because po of medical condition.
Oh, so did you undergo a medical procedure? No.
I had check-up, Mr. Chair, and I was diagnosed with pneumonia po.
Okay, sige. Tanong ko lang, Miss Muk, can I call you Booking?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
That's your nickname.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Imo nang Dagnay. Dagnay ni mo na. Are you Bisaya? Are you from
Bisaya, Mr. Chair.
Unsa man na kanang angga sa imo?
Angga.
Angga sa imo na. Okay.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
So Muking, saan ka nagtatrabaho?
At present, Mr. Chair, City Government of Davao, Mr. Chair.
City Government of Davao.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Congressman Acop.
may I inquire if the resource person has taken her oath?
Done already, Mr. Chair, Your
you.
Honor.
Thank you, Congressman Acop, for reminding us. So, ma'am, you're still connected with the Davao City Hall, LGU.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
And previous to your employment now at the Davao City Hall, where were you connected?
Office of the President, Mr. Chair.
Sa Office of the President, former President.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay, and what is your position at the Office of the President?
Assistant Secretary, Mr. Chair, from 2016 to 2021 and 2022 to January to June of 2022, USEC, Mr. Chair.
USEC of what, ma'am?
OP, Mr. Chair.
As a USEC, all those years you were under the OP.
Yes, Mr. Chair, from September 2016 to June of 2022.
So, first, ASEC. Ang entry mo was ASEC.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Prior to your being employed at the Office of the President, saan ka connected?
City Government of Davao, Mr. Chair.
So, you were already at the LGU sa City of Davao before you became ASEC and then eventually became USEC of the Office of the President.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so thank you. There was I cannot exactly remember what phrase or statement in the affidavit of Colonel Rina Garma wherein she mentioned your name as the one in charge of sending money. May I know to whom do you send this money?
I don't send any money, Mr.
So
Chair.
never.
Never, Mr. Chair.
Oh, hindi lang, I don't have kasi a copy of the affidavit of Colonel Garma, but I will try to look for a copy of the said affidavit. But in the meantime, I'd like to recognize Congresswoman Jinky Luistro. Sorry, I had to cut you earlier. May I know the pleasure of the gentle lady from Batangas?
I have few interjections for Mr. Britannico. to pursue the same line of question raised by the two gentlemen.
Okay,
Mr.
please
Chair.
proceed.
Mr. Britannico, can you please clarify? A certain Police Corporal Joseph Aldo Jovet made an admission. Saan po niya ginawa yung pag-amin na tinutukoy niyo?
Una po niyang binahagi ang pag-amin po niya, Mr. Chair, Ma'am Chair, sa NBI-DID po.
May we know who was the agent on case during that time?
One of the agents, Mr. Chair, was Attorney Zulaika Conyales po.
Attorney Zolaika
Conyales po, among other
Can you
agents.
please state the date when he did this admission?
That must have been June 6 of 2020, Mr. Chair.
Was that admission ever put into writing, Mr. Britannico?
Hindi po, Mr. Chair.
I wonder why.
Yun rin po, Mr. Chair.
Was the family present when that admission was given in front of the NBI agent?
We were in the vicinity, Mr. Chair, but not on that same room, Mr. Chair.
Was there no one who initiated to put this admission in writing during that time?
At that time po, Mr. Chair, hindi po.
All right.
At that time, Mr. Chair.
How about on the part of the NBI agent? Was it a custodial investigation, a question and answer that is happening where he did that admission?
I wouldn't be familiar, Mr. Chair, on how they conducted the investigation, Mr. Chair. But it was, I understand it was quite lengthy. It was at least a night of perhaps answering, engaging with him, Mr. Chair.
Would you know if Corporal Jovet during that time was being assisted by his own lawyer?
He had a lawyer, Mr. Chair.
May we know the name of that lawyer?
Attorney Gayos, Mr. Chair.
Attorney Ragayos.
Attorney Gayos, Mr.
Gayos.
Chair. Yes, we did provide him that lawyer, Mr. Chair.
I wish to manifest, Mr. Chair, that if it was a custodial investigation that took place in the NBI, then I suppose that there is a record with the NBI where the admission was done by Corporal Jovet in the presence and while assisted by his own lawyer. And would you know also if you are familiar, the Miranda Doctrine was explained to him?
I wouldn't know, Mr. Chair, of what took place when he was being asked about his knowledge of the case.
The reason, Mr. Chair, why I am raising these questions, I do not understand kung bakit mayroong nagko-confess na, umaamin na. Ano ba to? Pinalaya pa?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Ultimately, a night after or the day after he was released, one of the reasons given was that it was in conflict of a theory.
Arbitrary detention.
It was in conflict with findings of their NBI's own investigation.
How can it be in conflict if the person is actually admitting having killed not just one person, but actually, how many are they? 5.
Yes, that is a mystery also to us, Mr. Chair. At that time, when Joven, just to explain a little background, Mr. Chair, on the circumstances, Joven surrendered after a case was filed against him. The case had information.
This case is the case of your brother?
Yes.
When you said filed where? With the DOJ?
With the DOJ, Mr. Chair. There was a witness that was identified, a certain taxi driver.
Was it subsequent to or prior? The one you said he surrendered. Was it subsequent to or prior to the admission you were referring to earlier?
It was the case, I'm sorry, if you could repeat that question,
Alin
Mr.
po
Chair.
yung nauna? Yung sinasabi niyong admission before the NBI? Or yung surrender after the case was filed with the DOJ?
Sumunod na lang po yung surrender after po nakapag-file ng kaso.
I see. So, it appears that there were two opportunities already to take custody of the respondent at the very least.
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
Can I raise some question with the DOJ? May we know who was the handling prosecutor of this case?
Mr. Chair, we will submit the name after the hearing, Your Honor.
Can you please enlighten us? Fiscal, should I say?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
My admission, and correct me if I'm wrong, that amounts to extrajudicial confession already because that happened during custodial investigation. And the respondent is being assisted by his own lawyer. What
Yes,
should be
Mr.
the
Chair.
process?
Mr. Chair, if I am correct, what happened is that sometime May 2020, the police officer Joven voluntarily surrendered and admitted what he did. And around June of the same year, it is the time when the complaint was filed. The complaint was for the crime of murder and theft against the two police officers, Police Officer Villanueva.
You were referring, sir, about which cases? The one filed in June.
Britannico case, Mr. Chair.
Britannico case. So, does this mean na nag-request ng preliminary investigation ng ating respondents?
Mr. Chair, it is a regularly filed case by the NBI as well as the father of the victim, Attorney Salvador Britannico and Karen Britannico, the spouse of the victim, against two police officers, Police Officer Villanueva and Joven, and two John Does, for the crime of murder and theft. And because the theory is that they carried out the killing and that the taking of the cell phone was just to hide the crime that they committed, that's why the crime that was charged is murder, the theft was dismissed. Later on, 2 years after, they filed another complaint for robbery with homicide against, I think, seven police officers.
Sir, let's go back to the extrajudicial confession. Would you confirm that what happened at the NBI during that custodial investigation is already an extrajudicial confession?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
From the point of view of the DOJ, of the National Prosecution Service, of the prosecutor, ano po ba dapat ang gagawin nyo given the fact na merong valid extrajudicial confession?
Based from the resolution, Mr. Chair,
let's start from the date of the extrajudicial confession that the person is already at the office of the NBI. I wish to submit that with the valid extrajudicial confession, you will be able to establish outright the required amount of evidence that is probable cause. Am I correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair. That's why the case was filed sometime October 2021
Wait
for the
a
crime
second.
of murder.
When did the admission at the NBI happen? According to Mr. Britannico, it was June 6, 2020. Why did it have to take until October of 2020?
Mr. Chair, the second case was filed sometime 2022. The case that they filed was originally against 4 respondents only, Mr. Chair.
Please pardon me for interrupting. I wish to be enlightened. No? My extrajudicial confession,
Yes, Mr. Chair.
executed June 6, 2020. The person of interest, if not the respondent, is already at the premises of the NBI?
Mr. Chair, I think the NBI would be the best person to address that. Because what they filed is just against four respondents. And what the DOJ did was to file the case, the complaint that they filed. The DOJ
Would you
filed.
know, sir, the date when the NBI forwarded the case to DOJ?
I think around June 2020.
June 2020, Mr. Britannico?
Ma'am, just the sequence of events, Mr. Chair. The NBI first filed their case, which my father was also signatory.
Doon lang po tayo sa first case,
Yes,
sir.
yes. May 29 of 2020.
So the very day when your brother was killed,
May 29, 2020 po. So,
2020.
yes, so about
When did the incident happen?
January 19, 2020.
January 19.
Opo.
Alright.
So na-file po yung case ng May 29, 2020. On June 5 po, Joven surrenders po, sa Iloilo. Tapos he was flown po to Manila, and on June 6, that was when po he was he was in NBI TAF po. And that is when he made the confession po to the NBI at the time.
Alright. Balikan ko po si DOJ. This is actually an inquiry that I wish you will impart to all of us. From the point of view of the fiscal, mayroon kang valid extrajudicial confession. You will agree with me if I would say that that is enough to establish probable cause, right?
Mr. Chair, yes, if that is the fact, Mr. Chair. Unfortunately, the extrajudicial confession was not signed, and based on the records, there was no allegation that the extrajudicial confession was made with the assistance of a counsel for the respondent, the one making the admission.
Do you confirm that, Mr. Britannico, the extrajudicial confession was not signed?
Hindi po pinirmahan, Madam Chair po. But it was made po with the NBI with the presence of a lawyer.
It was done in the presence of the lawyer, but it was not signed.
At the time po, kasi ang sinabi po ni NBI po at that time, hindi nila tatanggapin po yung confession ni Joven. So he was told po na hindi ka namin tatanggapin as a witness.
And that is the reason why Joven did not sign the extrajudicial confession.
Ganon po ang nangyari.
How about when Joven surrendered with the DOJ?
Hindi po siya
Was it
nag-surrender.
with the DOJ?
Sa NBI po. Sa NBI po sa Iloilo ng June 5 po.
All right.
Tapos,
Was there ever a chance na ginawa ulit yung admission na yon during the second time that he appeared and surrendered with the NBI?
Sa amin na lang po sa pamilya ng 2 beses po, on 2 separate instances on video po. But he did not also sign his affidavit, but he signed all documents po pertaining to his narration of events.
Mr. Chair, I just want to manifest my frustration that the family had the chance already to secure a valid extrajudicial confession of guilt. However, I do understand what went wrong, why there was a delay in the filing, because lamentably speaking, Mr. Britannico, based on your narration, since it was not signed, that never ripened into a valid extrajudicial confession of guilt. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Congresswoman Jinky. Congressman,
Mr. Chair, I was about to ask about similar questions with what was already
okay.
asked by Kong
so
Jinky.
thank you, Congressman Keith Flores.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Congresswoman Arlene Brosas.
Yes, Mr. Chair, since we are on the topic of extrajudicial killings, Mr. Chair, pwede ko na ba i-present, Mr. Chair, yung ilan pang mga cases ng extrajudicial killings, Mr. Chair.
Please continue.
Yes, Mr. Chair, since nagbigay po ng copy yata ng pahayag yung mga dalawang pamilya po na narito, si Rosenda Lemita at si Lizelle Asuncion, ang asawa po ni Manny Asuncion at ang nanay ni Chay Asuncion, Lemita. Sila po yung mga biktima ng Bloody Sunday. Mr. Chair, siguro dahil meron namang copy yung mga colleagues natin, baka pwedeng direct questions na lang. I will direct my questions to the family, kay Nanay Enda. Tapos siguro magtanong na rin ako ng ilan sa ating mga resource speakers, Mr. Chair. Nanay Enda, okay lang po ba? Magandang gabi na po sa inyo, Nanay Enda. Maaari po ba ninyong sabihin ang inyong buong pangalan tapos tirahan dito po sa Quadcom?
Magandang araw po sa lahat. At lubos po kaming nagpapasalamat sa House of Representatives na kami po ay binigyan ng pagkakataon na matugunan ang aming hinaing upang mabigyan ng katarungan ang pagpatay sa aking mga anak. Magandang araw po sa lahat. Ako po si Rosenda Limeta, taga Barangay Kalayo, Nasugbu, Batangas. Ina ni Chay Ibanghilista at biyanan ni Ariel Ibanghilista. Silang mag-asawa ay biktima ng badugong raid noong 7 ng Marso 2021 na mas kilala bilang Bloody Sunday Massacre o Coplan Asbal. Ang anokon si Chay ay miyembro ng ugnayan ng mamamayan laban sa pangwasak ng kalupaan at kalikasan ng Hacienda Looc o Umalpaska. Habang ang asawa niya ay mangingisda sa Kalayo, Nasugbu, Batangas. Sila ay mga kilalang organisador na inalay ang kanilang buong panahon para pagsilbihan ang masang api lalo sa Hacienda Looc. Ang mga mamayan po ng Hacienda Looc ay mayabong na ang kasaysayan ng pakikibaka upang itaguyod ang kanilang mga karapatan sa lupa laban sa mga serye ng mga land grabber na nagdulot ng malalang dilubyo sa komunidad. Malaki po ang naging papel ni Chay at Ariel para tulungan ang buong komunidad sa pagharap ng dilubyo na ito. Si Chay at si Ariel ay mga organisador ng Umalpaska upang ipaglaban ang karapatan ng mga mangingisda sa kanilang kahanapbuhay at mga magsasaka sa lupa. Nanguna sila sa iba't ibang pagkilos tulad ng mga barikada, protest rally, at dialogue sa mga ahensya ng gobyerno. Sa kabila ng mga hirap at banta sa kanilang seguridad, patuloy nilang isinulong ang kanilang layunin. Noong Marso 7, 2021, mahigit kumulang sa 5:00 ng umaga, pumasok ang hindi bababa sa 5 pulis at militar sa bahay nila kung saan kasama nila ang 9 na tanggulang na anak nila. Nagising ang pamilya, pinadapa si Ariel at nilagyan ng posas. Pagkatapos kinaladkad ng mga pulis at militar si Ariel papunta sa kabilang bahay na nakita ng aking anak at kapatid ni Chay. Naiulat din ng mga kapitbahay na marami ang nakabantay na PNP at AFP sa compound ni Chay at Ariel. At hindi pilit na hindi pinapalabas ang mga residente sa kanilang mga bahay. Lumabas si Chay, humihingi ng saklolo habang sumisigaw ng tulong mga may sundalo. Pagkatapos nito ay kinaladkad din si Chay papunta sa bahay kung nasaan si Ariel. Pagdating ni Chay sa bahay, nakarinig ng halos 10 gunshots ang mga kapitbahay. Nakita ng aking apo, kanilang 10 taong gulang na anak, na pinatayo sa pader ang kanyang magulang at kinuhanan ng picture. Binaril at dugoan sa kabilang bahay. 6:00 ng umaga, noong dumating ang search warrant, kasama ang pagdating ng Soko at iba pang pulis. Sobrang sakit at bigat para sa aking pamilya na mula pa lamang sa Siyandolook, bat-bat na kami ng mga harassment. Ang anak ko, si Eliza Dimeta, ay inaresto noong 2014 at sinampahan ng gawagang kaso ng anti-terror law. Hanggang ngayon, hinahabulan pa rin siya ng gawang-gawang kaso ng terrorism financing at itong ang kay Chay po ang pinakamabigat na siya ipatayin kasama ang kanyang asawa na si Ariel. Kaya kami po ay humihingi dito sa Quadcom na baka po sila ang makakatulong sa amin na magkaroon ng hustisya ang pagpatay sa aking mga anak na ipinagkait ng Department of Justice. Sa kabila ng kami po ay may supporting documents na sa investigasyon na ginawa ng NBI at CHR na nilabag ang karapatang mabuhay sila. Kaya sa araw na ito, pwede po bang ipakita ko sa inyo ang picture ng mga anak ko, Mr. Chair? Kaya sa araw na ito at sa bawat araw na darating, hindi kami titigil sa panawagan ng hustisya para sa aking mga anak na si Chay at Ariel at para sa lahat ng biktima ng extrajudicial killings sa ilalim ng administrasyong Rodrigo Duterte. Hanggat may nananawagan, hanggat may lumalaban, hindi kailan magtatagumpay ang panunupil at pagkitil ng buhay. Maraming salamat po at sana po makamit po namin ang tamang hustisya para po sa mga anak namin at para na rin po sa mga iba pang biktima ng extrajudicial killings. Maraming pong salamat.
Salamat po.
Thank you,
Yes,
Mr. Chair.
please proceed, Congresswoman Bros.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Tatanungin ko lang si Nanay Enda ng ilang mga katanungan, Mr. Chair. Nanay Enda, kamusta po si Raymark ngayon? Yung mga anak, ay, di ba, yung isang anak, no, na kamusta siya kasi siya ang nakakita ng pangyayari.
Sa ngayon po, nasa trauma pa rin po ang bata na kapag po pinag-uusapan ang kanyang magulang, nadagalit po siya kay Presidente Rodrigo Duterte dahil yung po raw ang may kasalanan sa pagkamatay ng kanyang mga magulang.
Kasi dumulog po kayo dito sa Quadcom, di ba? Ibig sabihin, ano po yung nangyari? Kung nagkaroon ng kaso, saan nyo ito dinulog, saan-saan kayo nagpunta para dito sa paghahanap ng hustisya sa inyong anak?
File po kami ng kaso sa Department of Justice at sa DOJ po. At naka-enclose po doon ang investigasyon ng National Bureau of Investigation, DID, at ang investigasyon po din ng Commission on Human Rights.
Ano pong nangyari dun sa kaso na dinulog ninyo?
Kasamang palad po, na-dismiss po yung kaso namin.
So, bakit po kayo ngayon nandito sa Quadcom?
Kami po ay humihingi dito sa Quadcom na baka po sila ang makakatulong sa amin na magkaroon ng hustisya ang pagpatay sa aking mga anak na ipinagkait po ng Department of Justice.
Thank you, Nanay Enda. Nanay Enda, siguro yung next question ko dun siguro sa legal counsel, no, ng mga biktima ng EJK, whether drug-related or activist-related. Familiar po dito si Attorney Chrissy Conti. Attorney Chrissy, baka pwedeng, ano yung masasabi ninyo dito sa mga modus operandi? Gusto ko kasing malaman ano yung connection ng parang war on drugs ito, pero war on dissent din, 'di ba? Ganyan yung itsura, Mr. Chair. So, what can you say about the modus operandi of this EJ case committed by state forces? And I believe yun din yung problema ng kay Mr. Britannico, no? Na state forces and parang may impunity na nangyari habang sila ay nasa posisyon, Mr. Chair. So, I would like to ask the opinion of Attorney Cristina Conti.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. As I shared in one of the previous sessions of the Quadcom, there are generally 3 steps in this campaign. First, vilification. You identify an enemy. In the case of drugs, they would say that these people are connected to the drug trade. In the case of activists, they would say that these are communists and therefore terrorists, criminals. After that, the operation would be conducted by possibly police officers or agents of state agents. The circumstances are similar actually in both drug-related killings and in activist killings. Nanlaban is a common narrative where planting of evidence or of drugs is common. Second, the killings would be conducted under the cloak of night, under the cloak of darkness, and they would ensure that there are no witnesses to the killings. However, I mean, openly, it would be as brazen as possible, meaning there would be others surrounding the location, but separated from the incident, or ilalayo po ng konti yung posibleng maging witness, pero malapit pa rin para ikakatakot ng lahat. At pangatlo, the third step would be absolution. Either poor or no investigation at all into the killings. And in both cases of the Britannico murder and in the case of the Bloody Sunday murders, that's obvious. The cases are stalled. And in the case of Britannico, even if there are charges already pending, hindi nga po nila mahuli yung may kasalanan. Lalo na po dito, yung police, active duty pa rin.
Thank you, Attorney. Attorney, para kasing series of operations conducted, tas mass application, issuance of search warrants. Itong Bloody Sunday, prior to the operations, 42 out of 63 search warrant applications in Manila RTC were granted. Ito po yung kanina na introduction ko ng speech, kaugnay dito sa Bloody Sunday. Tapos, meanwhile, 4 out of 9 search warrant applications were also granted in our Antipolo RTC. How is this possible? What is the process involved para kasing mass manufacturing of search warrants, no? Seemingly, merong search warrant factory, Mr. Chair. So, yun po yung tanong ko. Siguro, baka pwede rin tayong magtanong kay sa legal counsel ng NUPL, si Attorney Julian Oliva.
Yes, Madam Chair. Actually, merong circular yung Supreme Court allowing the executive judges ng Quezon City and Manila to approve or issue search warrants applicable in the whole country, no? Ibig sabihin, kahit sa Mindanao i-apply i-execute yung search warrant, pwede niyang i-apply yan sa executive judges ng Quezon City, RTC, at o kaya ng Manila RTC. Ito ngayon ginamit. Nung nauso kasi, ang paborito nilang applyan ng search warrant dati ay yung executive judge ng Quezon City. Nung marami ng mga search warrant na in-issue nung executive judge ng Quezon City, bali at saka na baliktad dyan o in-invalidate yan ng mga korte, ang ginawa nilang sampahan ng search warrant ay yung executive judge ng Manila. Kaya doon sinampa yung napakaraming search warrant, application for search warrant. Sinabi nga, mahigit napakaraming sinampa sa executive judge ng Manila. Ang ginawa ng executive judge ng Manila, dinistribute to sa mga vice executive judge. Ang nangyari, sa napakaraming application for search warrant na sinampa, halos ilan lang yung mga witnesses, no? Pare-pareho yung sinasabi. Kaya may mga search warrant na dinismiss at saka may mga search warrant na inapprove, no, at na-issue. Parang ganun yung ginagawa ng para maging legalize yung gagawin nilang operation. Nag-a-apply muna sa search warrant, kumukuha ng mga bayarang witnesses o mga nagbibigay ng mga perjured testimony para mag-apply ng search warrant. Bali, ganun yung nangyari doon sa mga operations ng police.
Thank you,
Lalo
Mr.
na
Chair.
sa Bloody Sunday.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, if I may add. If I may
Yes,
add.
Attorney Chrissy would like to.
Yes,
Your Honor, as regards this policy, just in addition, Mr. Chair, I'd like to share that the issuance of a search warrant goes through the judge. Una po munang kukumbinsihin ng mga pulis yung judge na mag-issue ng search warrant at yung judge ay dapat aralin yung ebidensya na ipapakita sa kanya bago siya papayag o makukumbensing mag-issue ng search warrant. Ito pong 2 stages na ito, nagkakaroon po ng anomalya as was shared. We've had several cases where the warrants issued were eventually questioned and overturned. Meaning, yung sa sinasabi po ni Attorney Oliva na itong search warrant ang nagiging dahilan para pumasok nung bahay. If invalidated, the issuance of the search warrant, magiging fruit of the poisonous tree ang succeeding operation. Meaning, wala silang dahilan para pumasok at yung pagpatay ay clearly out of line, the implementation. Ang unang stage po niyan ay yung pagpapaniwala na merong ebidensya. At dyan laging sabit po ang pulis dahil nag-iimbento po sila ng mga kwento. Pangalawa, ang posible pong sumabit ay yung judge na hindi po nagtatanong ng tinatawag na searching or probing questions resulting in answers. Kaya dito naman po yung issue at concern namin kay Judge Villavert ng Quezon City.
Thank you. I remember, nakita ko po, Mr. Chair, before sa isang picture na nag-meeting si Debode Sinas at saka si Cecilia Villavert, Quezon City Executive Judge, just before this happened, nung itong mga sunod-sunod na pagpatay din, Mr. Chair. I don't know kung ano yung kanilang pinag-usapan, but then I've seen a picture of them together talking. Anyway, all of this transpired under the term of then PNP Chief Debode Sinas at yung former head of PNP CIDG Regional Field Unit in Region 4A, si Lito Patay. Familiar names, familiar faces, Mr. Chair. Kasi kung ano yung sa EJK, yun din yung sa war on drugs, ito rin yung sa war on dissent. So, what was their role in the mass application and approval of the search warrants that were used for conducting these bloody operations? So, tingin ko kailangan talaga natin, Mr. Chair, at the proper time ipatawag ang mga involved dito. And even siguro yung kakayanin natin na usapin dito sa issue ng mga search warrants by executive judges. Ano, Mr. Chair? But anyway, Mr. Chair, yung mismong tagapagpatupad ng war on drugs bilang PNP chief. Tapos yung Davao Boys na pinadala noon sa batasan, maraming namatay sa war on drugs nung panahon na yon. Involved din talaga sa pagpatay sa mga aktivista sa Bloody Sunday Massacre, Mr. Chair. Now, Mr. Chair, I would like to ask siguro si Dr. Fortun, kaugnay po sa case ni Chay, yung binabanggit po ng nanay ni Chay, si Nanay Enda, particular po sa kanilang, siguro yung records po ng findings, I believe kayo po yung tingin, no, sa bangkay ng namatay sa Bloody Sunday. Tama po ba?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I actually saw all 9, plus one more victim, actually Mr. Dan Miguel. I would count him also among these deaths because he was the one facilitating the autopsies, and then he himself was ambushed and killed within the same month. And so I have all the 10 cases, the records are with me now. And if you would have a particular question.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Papadescribe ko lang po sana, Doc, yung record ng findings on Chai and Ariel Evangelista, particularly yung, kasi ang sinabi po sa PNP autopsy, they just said cause of death was gunshot wounds to the body. Ganun po kasimple ang sinabi. Ano pong masasabi ninyo doon sa ganong ang cause of death lang ay ganito?
I found the spouses, Ariel Evangelista and Ana Maria Evangelista. The bodies were examined, previously examined. I would not count that as an autopsy because in both of them, there was just an anterior midline incision of the trunk. There was partial internal examination. Anyway, since I saw the bodies, typically they sustained gunshot wounds, then the first thing I would do is ask for x-rays. So they underwent x-rays in PJH. So I have those. I was able to recover some bullets, which eventually I turned over to NBI because they asked for them. Both cases had multiple gunshot wounds. For Mr. Ariel Evangelista, I identified 2 in the chest. And then there were gunshot wounds to the right upper extremity, right arm. And this is what I was saying earlier about consistency with defense injuries. Same with Ana Maria Evangelista. She sustained, I believe, at least 2 gunshot wounds to the chest, another one in the abdomen, and then also gunshot wounds to the upper extremities, which would again be consistent with defense type injuries. So in a nutshell, those are the summaries, but I have all the documentation, the pictures, the diagrams for all of these cases.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Doc, meron pa akong tanong. Pag sinabing COD, ano naman yung MOD? Doc, doon sa
cause of death answers the question of why person died, and this would be the injuries. It's not just a matter of what PNP typically does is they just zero in on cause of death. And then if they say multiple gunshot wounds to the trunk, that is not what forensic pathology is all about. We go beyond that. Like for instance, of all the injuries, which is most fatal, can you say possible sequence? Can you, as I mentioned earlier, can you reconstruct how they were shot? And so on. What are the internal injuries? So you got shot in the chest. What did the bullets hit? When you say manner of death, this refers to how the person was killed. And the most common would be natural causes, which is due to disease. So whatever is not due to disease, like there's violence, this is unnatural. And in this case, I classify them as homicide because that is as far as we would go. You might say this is murder, but that is a legal term. But we do not use murder. In the death certificate, it's just homicide, meaning death was due to the action or actions of another person or other people.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Another question po doon sa binanggit nyo kanina yung gunshot, diba, na sa findings po sa gunshot residue sa GSR, kina Chai at Ariel. For the record, Mr. Chair, merong 2 conflicting chemistry reports ayon sa AO35, SIT. Una, both hands ni Chai ang positive, tas negative for Ariel. Yung pangalawang chem report, baliktad, yung kamay ni Ariel, daw ni Ariel, ang positive at yung kay Chai ang negative. In your experience, Doc, no, what could have happened? Bakit may mga ganitong conflicting results?
Since the supposed gunshot residues were done in the Philippines, I am guessing these are what you would call the paraffin tests, which is actually a very outdated test. Originally, it started in 1931. As early as the 1960s, the international community decided it does not distinguish a shooter from a non-shooter, and therefore it is junk. But still, the Philippines in the 21st century, our police still insist on the paraffin test. If they say this is positive or negative, one major drawback of this test is it is not even reproducible. You cannot even document the positivity or negativity because it's supposed to be a very subjective color change. So nobody else in the world with forensic science, updated forensic science, uses the paraffin test. Only in the Philippines.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So inconclusive ito.
Definitely inconclusive.
Kaya po ba nating malaman kung sino yung perpetrator sa isang killing? Tapos ano yung mga paraan para ma-determine yung identity of the perpetrator?
Listening in on the painful Britannico case earlier and that of Mr. Mueller, I was thinking that, each shooting leaves a wealth of physical evidence. And, but unfortunately in the Philippines, that is not pursued. We do not have a real CSI. Every fired gun would leaves a lot of physical evidence. Like for instance, at the scene, if you have a semi-automatic pistol, the casing would be left there. And then the bullet would pass through objects, including the body, and it would leave a track or wounds in the body. If it stays in the body, does not exit, it has to be recovered. If it exits, it impacts another location. And you have to identify, recover it. If a body is hit and you're still alive when you're shot, not dead, then you have blood spatter, and that can also be analyzed. And then all those things, even tire track marks, fingerprints, and so on, there are ways to identify people, to connect shooting with a particular gun, with a particular shooter. But this is physical evidence. And again, in the Philippines, we hardly consider physical evidence, and that's why we have to resort to statements. And there are weaknesses in statements, but physical evidence is subjective. There's science in it.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair.